You know, he talked a little bit about the importance of everybody having a role in making our community a better place. I've known Mattress Mac since the day or days that I lived in Houston, Texas. And I have never seen anybody step up and do more for their community than Mattress Mac. Everybody here remembers Hurricane Harvey. You may remember the way that Mattress Mac opened up his store there on I-45 on the North Freeway, making sure that he helped people out. We had a press conference at Mattress Mac's facility on I-45 where we announced the great program the state of Texas was putting in place to make sure we would be able to recover from Hurricane Harvey. Thank you again, Mattress Mac. I want to say something real quick about one thing he was talking about, and that was what he is doing and what we're doing in partnering with him to address education. Listen, our schools are so incredibly important, but we also need to make sure that we're providing multiple pathways for everybody so that everybody has an opportunity to succeed in our state. You talk about trade schools, which are so incredibly important because, listen, for every child who wants to go to college, we want to make sure that they're going to have the opportunity to go to college and get a college degree. And I got to tell you, as we gather in Texas today, there is no state in America that has more Tier 1 research universities than the great state of Texas. But that said, we realize that college is not the right pathway for everybody. But everybody deserves a good paying job. That's why we passed a trade school apprenticeship program. And this provides people the opportunity to get an education that provides them high skill training. I went out to a location not too far from here over on the east side of Houston at S&B Engineers and Constructors. They are participating in this apprenticeship program. And when I went out there, I visited a young woman who had gone through that program and had been working at S&B Engineers for a few years. And talking to her, I learned that just 4 years earlier, she had been homeless. She'd been hopeless, had no job, had no idea what her future was going to be like. And then she went through that apprenticeship program at S&B Engineers. And she told me that after working her way up through that program and climbing the ladder at S&B Engineers, she now owns her own home. So I said, let me get this straight. 4 years ago, you were homeless. Now you own your own home. I said, how much are you making? And she told me, I said, this is astonishing. 4 years ago, you weren't making anything. Today, you are now making more than the governor of Texas. That is what these apprenticeship programs provide. Thank you, Mattress Mac, for everything you're doing to make programs like that come to life. Now, listen, I was at an event last night, an event that was absolutely the largest political event I've ever seen in my entire life. Right over here, we got a guy wearing a Longhorn shirt. Hook 'em horns over here. Here's my point. And I have no doubt there's a few Aggies in the room also. There you go. So here's my point. I've been to Aggie games. I've been to Longhorn games. I've been to Cougar games. I have been to no football game where I've seen more people in attendance than were there last night, or louder and having more fun and celebrating exactly what our country represents. But also, it's clear from what happened last night, the size of the political crowd and the emotion in the crowd, there is a movement afoot, a movement that's pushing back against the failed Biden administration. A movement that's going to have a red wave sweeping across the great state of Texas. And that red wave will ensure, among other things, that we are going to re-elect your Republican state representatives right here in Fort Bend County. I want to thank J.C. Chutan for both his introduction, but also for what he did. I'm sure you know this, but it's worth repeating. He was selected as the Freshman of the Year because he did such a great job serving you in the state legislature. And you have right here in front of me two of your other great state representatives. You have Phil Stevenson and Gary Gates. Give it up for both of them for the great job they do. And listen, let me tell you why I think that the crowd was so fired up last night getting to hear from Trump, but also why this is going to be such a powerful year for Republican victories. And that's because all of us, we're going to go out and do exactly what President Trump did last night. We're going to show the contrast between Republicans and Democrats, and it's never been more clear. You know, candidly, they used to be Democrats, and then they were liberals, and then they were progressives. Now they tell you who they are. They tell you they are socialists, and they are running as socialists, and we are not going to allow the socialist big government agenda to destroy what we've been able to achieve in the great state of Texas. Take, for example, one of the things that Mattress Mac was talking about. Look at the way that we've been able to create such a powerful economy. Texas ranks number one in so many metrics for jobs in the economy. Texas is the number one state in the United States of America as the best state for doing business every year that I have been your governor. Every year that I've been your governor, Texas has ranked number one as the number one state for the most economic development projects and expansions, growing businesses, creating jobs in our great state. Now listen, I know that some of these businesses are large businesses, but I also know this. The backbone of businesses in Texas are our small businesses. 9 out of 10 businesses are small businesses, and they employ about half of all working Texans. So I'm proud to tell you, Texas also ranks as the number one state in America to start a small business. And so Mattress Mac told you one of the amazing stats of what all of this stuff means. And that is, if you look at the job creation and you look at the growth of our economy, Texas now has the 9th largest economy in the entire world. And he talked about the way that we were able to achieve this even during the time of COVID, because remember this, before COVID hit, Texas at that time, we had the 10th largest economy. But now we're 9th, and that means even during the time of COVID, we surpassed another country. We surpassed Brazil. And so Texas has a larger economy than Brazil, a larger economy than our neighbors of Canada and Mexico, a larger economy than countries like Australia, and Texas even has a larger economy than Russia. I'll be getting into this more later on, but if we have a larger economy than Russia, and we are that powerful, and we have President Biden, as we speak, working to send boots on the ground to the border between Russia and the Ukraine, let me tell you something. He needs to be looking at our own border and sending more boots on the ground to secure our own border. But listen, we need to understand that as great as our job growth is going, the most profound thing isn't all these different numbers we're talking about. The most important thing is, as we gather in Fort Bend County today, I can tell you more Texans have a job than ever before in the history of our great state. But listen, all of our jobs are under threat. They're under threat by these socialistic agenda policies that I was talking about before. Let me give you an example. The example is the Green New Deal that Biden and Beto are pushing. That the Green New Deal would crush the energy sector that provides hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs in our state. Energy jobs that made America energy independent. We are not going to allow the radical leftist agenda to destroy the energy jobs in Texas. I am running for governor to protect our energy jobs in the Lone Star State. But listen, it's not just things like jobs. There are other ways in which we see this radical leftist agenda surface. One of them actually is in the education system that both Mac and I were talking about earlier. One thing that we've seen across America that's been destructive as it concerns the indoctrination of our children that you think maybe happens in some place like California, but I was astonished and disturbed when I learned that it was happening in Texas. And what I'm talking about is this critical race theory that's being taught to our kids. They are trying to be taught to rewrite the history of the United States of America, to disdain and hate the history of the United States of America. And they're trying to redesign the future of the greatest country in the history of the world. And worse than that, they are trying to categorize people on the basis of race and then pit people against each other on the basis of race. That is contrary to what our country stands for and contrary to what Martin Luther King Jr. himself taught us. And that is we are to be judged not by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. So we passed a law in this special session that I signed that addressed critical race theory, but it did so in only a limited way. And so I added critical race theory to the special session. It got passed, and now Texas has a ban on critical race theory in every grade, in every subject, in every public school in the great state of Texas. Texas has the strongest ban on critical race theory of any state in the United States. But one thing I think we can all agree upon. Listen, we support our public schools. I went to public schools in the state of Texas. As governor, I have provided more funding to our public schools than any other governor in Texas history. But we need to understand this. In the end, we need to understand that there is no government program that can replace the role that parents play in the education of our children. And that is why I am campaigning on passing a Parents' Bill of Rights to restore parents to their rightful role as a primary decision maker for their children's education and health care matters. Parents matter. One of the most dangerous ways in which we see this radical leftist agenda take place is in the safety of our communities. We've seen it in places like San Francisco and California. You've seen this smash and grab crime stuff. You've seen the lawlessness in Portland and Seattle. You saw what happened in Minneapolis. You've seen what goes on in Chicago and New York. And all of it is a byproduct of this new socialistic approach of redesigning law enforcement in our country to defund the police and not support law enforcement officers. And now we see both Biden as well as Beto talking about redesigning law enforcement and defunding the police. Let me tell you, in Texas, we support our law enforcement officers, period. And that's why this past session, we all worked together with your terrific members of the House from right here in Fort Bend County, and we passed a law that will defund any city that defunds the police. We are not going to tolerate disrespect for our law enforcement officers. Another thing that we all need to come to grips with, and that is we do have some crime problems in Houston, Texas, and Harris County, Texas. You've seen the stories lately, and candidly, if you've been following the news, which I know you have, you've seen the stories for a couple of years now. One of the leading reasons why there is some violent crime occurring in Harris County, Texas, is because of the broken bail system they have in Harris County. Remember this, go back in time the last couple of elections. The last couple of elections in Harris County, there have been candidates running to be criminal judges in Harris County running as Democrat socialists. And they've been taking a socialistic approach with regard to bail reform, and they've been letting dangerous criminals who've been arrested for dangerous crimes back out onto the streets. A report I heard was that over the past 2 years, more than 100 people in Harris County have been killed by dangerous criminals who were released on bail who should not have been released. That's why we worked with the state legislature to pass bail reform this past session that I signed into law to crack down on a broken bail system. But I want you to know this, that bail reform is going to be effective at cracking down on some of the bail abuses that we saw taking place in Harris County. To make that bail reform complete, however, we need to pass a constitutional amendment. That constitutional amendment did not pass, and I'll tell you why. Democrats voted against the constitutional amendment that would have reformed a broken bail system in Texas. Democrats voted against constitutional amendments that would have ensured we keep dangerous criminals behind bars. That is why we need to elect more Republicans to the Texas House of Representatives this next session. Listen, I think we all know that as much danger as we see from the radical leftist position on defunding the police, we see even more danger because of Biden and Beto's open border policies that's leading to open floodgates of people crossing our border. It is reckless, it is dangerous, and it's unnecessary. When President Trump was in office, his policies led to the lowest immigration crossings we've seen in decades. He did 4 simple things. 1, he implemented the Remain in Mexico policy. 2, he imposed the Title 42 policy. 3, he eliminated the catch and release policy. And 4, he began to build the border wall. And what Biden did, when Biden came into office, he not only eliminated all 4 of those, he sent a message to everybody across the entire world, but most importantly and most devastatingly, he sent a message to ICE, and he sent a message to his own Border Patrol that they are no longer to enforce laws passed by the United States Congress. And as a result, we've seen over the past year almost 2 million people crossing our border illegally from more than 150 countries across the entire globe, including some very dangerous people from terrorist-based nations. The president has a responsibility for national security in our country. He has abandoned his role as president of the United States to secure our country from terrorist-based nations. That is reprehensible. And that is exactly why Texas is stepping up to do his job, and Texas is doing more than any state has ever done in the history of the United States to secure our border. With these legislators, we are adding more than $3 billion to secure our border. That includes 10,000 National Guard and Texas Department of Public Safety officers down there arresting these drug smugglers smuggling fentanyl across the border and arresting human traffickers, putting human traffickers behind bars. It also means that Texas is now building our own border wall, securing our state. We also need to be concerned about the way that this radical leftist agenda, they're trying to eviscerate the United States Constitution. Take the First Amendment, for example. You all know what the First Amendment guarantees. It guarantees both freedom of speech, but as well as freedom of religion. And get this of what Beto came out and talked about when he was running for president of the United States. He talked about eliminating the freedom of religion by eliminating the tax-exempt status of any church that refused to bow down to the woke left agenda. I will not let that happen in Texas. And what comes after the First Amendment? The Second Amendment. Where does Beto stand on the Second Amendment? Yeah, So Beto, he told you he's going to come and take your guns. That is not going to happen in Texas. I signed more than 20 laws to protect your Second Amendment rights, including making Texas a constitutional carry state and making Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary state. Listen, I can tell you guys are a patriotic crowd. I know one thing about this crowd right here. You all love the United States of America. You think America is the greatest country in the history of the entire world. There you go. But I have a feeling there may even be some people in here where you may even like and love Texas as much, if not more, than you love the United States of America. Here's what I want you to come to grips with. As much as you love America, as much as you love the great state of Texas, there are people running for office in this state who disdain and hate America for the way that it is. They hate Texas for the way that it is. They want to win office and redesign our great state and redesign the future of America, and we will not let that happen. We are going to crush Beto, and we're going to have a red wave sweep across the entire great state of Texas, and that starts today in Fort Bend County, Texas. Working together, we're going to keep Texas the best state in the greatest nation in the history of this entire world. God bless you all, and God bless the great state of Texas.